In today's Leadership English episode, you're going to learn storytelling strategies that will help you communicate more effectively in an American corporate setting. My name is Tanya Suarez, and as a leadership communication coach, I'm here to help professionals who are non native speakers speak English clearly and confidently. Now, in today's episode, you're also going to get a sneak peek into my Leadership Communication Accelerator. If you'd like to apply for this intensive program, head over to tanyasuarez.com/leadership. Now, the three pillars of my program are confidence, clarity, and connection. Today, we're going to talk about clarity. Now, what makes this unique in terms of this being a program and training for non native speakers is that when it comes to leadership communication, part of what clarity means is the messaging, is being clear in how you communicate. However, for non native speakers, this also includes pronunciation, intonation, things that will help you sound more natural, understanding the nuances of the language and how you say it will also impact how it's perceived. So not only do you have to worry about what you're saying, you also have to think about it's this multi-layered process for you that you're thinking about how you would say it in your native language. And then there might be some resentment in that process, right? Where you're like, oh, if I could say it in my native language, I could say this so much better. And then you're trying to translate and figure it out. And all of this is happening in seconds. This can be quite overwhelming. So, for this kind of approach, we're going to help you understand why you say the things you say in terms of how you say it with storytelling and what's a more effective way to do it. And this will make more sense in a moment. So let's take a look at this quote. Simplifying it, especially in speaking, being able to say something in a simple way. This is what we talk about with the greatest communicators is they explain science or they explain technology in a very simple way. This is a great quote. This is what inspires people. When you can take a complex topic and simplify it and communicate it in a way that is clear for your audience, that's a beautiful skill. For you as a non-native speaker, this is so much more complex than other people would have to go through. Because not only do you have really high level expertise at this level of your career, so you're already having to simplify very complicated topics, whether it's to your clients or customers, if you work in tech. When you're presenting to engineers, that's very different. They understand the technical stuff. When you have to convey these complex technical topics or medical or whatever industry you're in to people who are not experts in the field, you have to be able to simplify it. And that's a skill in and of itself. Adding into that language and really being able to let go of this habit that you might have, and this is something that I really want you to observe in yourself. Do you tend to try to overcomplicate your grammar or use words that you think are more advanced because you're trying to prove yourself? I'm telling you, this is why this program is so intensive and why I do what I do with this podcast and with my videos. I want you to understand that when you're at this level of fluency and you're at this level in your career, there are so many other things at play that might be blocking you. It's not just, I need more English and I need to be more fluent. It's really digging deeper, understanding why you say the things that you say, why you're translating in a certain way, and then being able to use that knowledge and pivot so that you can communicate more effectively. So let me show you what I mean. For example, this is my triangle that you might have heard some of my past graduates of the program talk about. This is what you might be doing. And what I mean by this triangle, which if you can't see it, it's an upside down triangle. There are usually two reasons that you would communicate in this way. And this is what takes this program and my training to a deeper level that's targeted to your experience as a non native speaker. Because why do you tend to speak in this upside down or inverted triangle? And what this means, by the way, is that you start with the details first and then you get to the point. Now, it's one of these two reasons or both. The first one being you're trying to overcompensate. You're trying to make sure that people understand you. And because English is not your native language, you're trying to provide more context for them in case you make a mistake. So that could be one reason. Predominantly with my clients, what I see the reason being is that they come from cultures, and I want you to explore if this is true for you, cultures where This is the most effective way to communicate. So if you come from a culture where you're establishing trust through context first, I usually say, you take the journey and then the destination. That's not what American corporate English expects. So if you're coming from a culture where this is how you're used to communicating in a professional way, it's not going to translate well. And I actually don't mean translate in terms of word for word English. I mean translating in terms of the messaging. And that's where this more high level leadership communication training. This is where you're going to learn what that means. And so this is what I want you to think about if when you present or when you're communicating with people, do people tend to get impatient with you? Do they maybe start looking around or sighing? Do you tend to lose people's attention? If you do, this might be one of the reasons that that happens. Other reasons could be you're speaking in a very monotone way, or there could be other things we can explore. But in terms of storytelling, this could be why. And what I tell my clients is I want you to be patient with yourself because your intention is good. When we're communicating, you're doing it to earn trust. So, what you're doing is you're trying to earn trust by communicating in the way that your culture has taught you. So, that means you're trying to let them see everything and then take them to the main point because in your mind, that earns their trust and that's your version of transparency. However, it's really important when you're in this multinational, intercultural business that you understand that even though that's your intention, that's not what your execution is saying to the people that you're speaking with. Unfortunately, if you're doing that in an American corporate setting, it might be kind of boring to the other people. It's like, all right, we don't need to know all that. But it actually comes across as the opposite of trustworthy and transparent. When someone starts with that much detail, people are going to start thinking, why? What are you hiding? Why are you telling me so much? So when you understand that, take a deep breath. I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, that's why I ruined so many deals in the past, or that's why I would lose people's attention. Instead, I want you to think, finally, I understand why I was having those moments. It's not about needing to learn 400 more verbs and nouns and adjectives. It's about your storytelling technique. So now that you understand that, what you're going to do is you're going to let that go. You're going to catch yourself as well. I want you to really see when you have those moments of, okay, I'm doing it again. I need to get to the point. I want you to visualize the triangle. So this is what, after the intensive training, our goal is to have you be in this point where you're naturally communicating in the way that's most effective for American corporate. So you're going to get to the point first, then if and only if they need details, then you share. And usually you'll get a cue at this when people ask questions, or if they look a little bit more expectant, then you're going to be able to take those cues and elaborate and give them more details. But typically with Americans, we just want the bottom line. Give me the main point, save me time. Don't make this 20-minute meeting 45 minutes. Now, to be honest, no matter how much you train, it's never going to be perfect. Remember, it's progress, not perfection. So part of what my training includes, it's being pragmatic, it's being realistic. You're not only training to communicate well, you also need to train what to do when you fall back on old habits. When you get nervous and you start rambling, which means you just go on and on and on. What happens then? And so part of it is I want to arm you with the tools to be able to pivot when you need to, because we're not expecting perfection. We are expecting being human and being able to confidently make mistakes. So, in addition to now knowing the storytelling structure that is most effective, what are you going to say when you mess up? Because inevitably it's going to happen, and that's okay. So, let's take a look at some expressions that you can use. To make a long story short, this one's great when you've already gone the long story route. Take a breath. You know, to make a long story short, so you're going to, in terms of intonation, you're going to drag that out a little bit. Take that time when you start feeling your heart rate accelerate and you're thinking, oh, I messed up again. No, take a breath. And sometimes I'll add phrases like, or well, to make a long story short, this is the main point. It's really calm. I don't want you to verbalize that you think you've made a mistake because honestly, people probably haven't noticed. Or if they did, they'll just appreciate that you're pivoting and you're making it shorter. So don't say, "Oh, I keep going on and on. I'm so sorry." No, no, no. Just take a breath and use these expressions. Getting back to the point. This is great. Now, you don't want to say it so robotically. If you're rambling, going on and on, you're like, getting back to the point because you're saying it in that monotone way, people won't realize that you're pivoting and it's going to cause confusion. It's not going to flow very well. So, again, taking that deep breath not only allows you to check your posture, get back in confident position, but it gives you time. So, if you're going on and like, oh, this quarter's numbers, and then you're like, but getting back to the point. So when you say, but or getting back to the point, when you say it slowly, when you change that intonation, that's a sign to someone of, okay, she's not rambling anymore. I can pay attention now. So you're going to use that moment for impact. When you change your intonation, that allows you to have more impact and more influence because you're getting people's attention again. To cut to the chase. This one's great. I would say this is definitely more idiomatic. So if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to use it, but it's also good to know what it means. So this is what they mean when native speakers say this. It's just them also pivoting and getting to the main point. In terms of pronunciation, notice it's not to cut to the chase, but to cut to the chase. So oftentimes with American pronunciation, we reduce to instead of to, like the number two, to, to. This is also helpful whether you use that phrase or not. When you understand American reductions with pronunciation, not only does your English sound more natural, but oftentimes you'll understand Americans better because you're like, oh, that's what they're saying. Because when you learn English in a traditional setting, you're learning correct English, like very correct and how to articulate and enunciate. Americans don't often follow that. So this is another opportunity for you to increase your comprehension and listening skills. The main idea is grammatically, this is probably the simplest, but again, you want to breathe. If you're like, oh, blah, blah, and this and that, well, the main idea is notice I took, well, the main idea, I'm really highlighting with my intonation and by slowing down. And this is something really powerful. To add emphasis doesn't always mean to punch up a syllable or a word or to be louder. I find that slowing down is a really effective way to emphasize a moment or a word. So instead of the main idea is, just slow it down. The main idea is that we blah, blah, blah. And the more you slow down, when you choose and train yourself to slow down when you want to emphasize or when you want to pivot in these moments, that also slows your heart rate down, decreases anxiety. When you're not anxious, you're able to think clearly, and that's going to allow you to have less of those moments where you freeze and you're like, what? What word am I looking for? So it all helps with the English fluency and creativity as well. In a nutshell, again, this is one kind of like to cut to the chase. It's more idiomatic. I find that this is better for you to know, not necessarily to use if you're not comfortable with it. But also now that you know, and when you hear someone say, oh, in a nutshell, you're like, what the heck is a nutshell? All it means is, in summary, getting to the point. To put it simply, this is great. It also tells you what you're supposed to be doing. So if you're going on and on about, well, the research was saying that these are the results, and you're like, oh man, I'm going on too much. Just pause. That's great information, but to put it simply, what we need to focus on is blah. So here, I think it's really interesting when you involve the audience in your process. You can tell that I'm realizing there's a lot of information there, but the way that I'm confidently pivoting and saying, that's a lot of research and a lot of data that we have. You can even say, you know what, there's a lot more data to that, or there's a lot more information. I'm happy to send that to you later in an email. But to put it simply, notice how confident and smooth that is, and how I find that almost feels more collaborative of, hey, I know this is a lot and I'm going to respect your time and I'm going to make it more concise. So this helps people feel, again, it's that leadership through example, through words, through actions. If I would have said, "Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm going into all those details again, and I guess I guess I can send you the report." I don't know, but maybe to put it simply, that apologetic tone, which I find a lot of people will fall into, that's not confident. It makes you feel bad. It really highlights to other people that you're maybe not that good at either the public speaking, or they might doubt your expertise. And that's the last thing I want for you. A lot of times for non-native speakers, your doubts about your English and your doubts about your communication, that's what you're trying to compensate for, and that's what you're trying to be apologetic about. But to the person or the people listening to you, they're probably not going to understand that it's your English you're being apologetic about. They might perceive it as, oh, this person is not confident in their skill. This person's not confident in their expertise. So I want you to really understand that and make an effort to, when you need to pivot or correct a mistake, do it smoothly, confidently, and try not to call attention to it because it's hurting your reputation. And that's something that is really precious in any industry. And my favorite one, here's the bottom line. Americans love the bottom line, not only the expression, but that's the point of the triangle. What is the bottom line? So the bottom is the top of the triangle. To me, out of all these expressions, my favorites are to make a long story short, and here's the bottom line. And you don't have to say here's. You can also simplify it of, well, the bottom line is, so you can take away here's and modify it and make it your own. And when you practice it, because I want you to practice, don't wait until you need it. So I want you to pretend, pick a topic that you normally have to talk about at work. Okay, so we have to have these layoffs, and like these are the numbers that we need to reach if we don't want to have those layoffs, and da da da. You're like, okay, well, look, all the information's there for you. The bottom line is, if we don't meet this quota, then we have to have layoffs. So practice the pause, practice figuring out what you're going to say. At this point, we have the same kind of meetings over and over again. So, if you're talking about reports, are you going to offer to email it to people? Are you going to offer, like figure out what your usual is and find ways to explain it and pivot into these transition phrases to bring you back to the main point. And that's going to help you feel more confident to use it when you need it. And look, these are a bunch of expressions. You don't need to use all of them. Pick your favorite one or two and start using them. Remember, you're not a student anymore. It's not about writing these down and memorizing them and writing examples. Stop writing. These are expressions that I want you to speak. How you say it, how you look when you say it. Record yourself. Part of the program is I have all of my students record themselves and send me them actually using all the things that we learn. This is not theoretical. Theory and academia is beautiful, but this is not what this is. This is a really pragmatic, usable approach that teaches you the words and skills that you're going to use. So you want to simplify it, which is the name of the game for storytelling as well. So I want you to right now pick one or two of these, and I want you to write it down on a Post-it, put it by your computer, and make an effort to use them this week in conversation or in meetings. That's the only way that you're going to really elevate your communication style. It's to find out what you're doing, why you're doing it. In this case, storytelling, it's probably a cultural habit that you have. Understanding it, realizing what the American norm is, if that's what your goal is to communicate in, and practice, practice, practice. If you're in my program, this is practice with feedback where I analyze your work and let you know how to do it better. If you're not with me, record yourself, analyze yourself. Whatever you need to do it. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Please let me know in the comments what other topics you want me to dive into in future trainings. And remember that if you want to join the Leadership Communication Accelerator, go to tanyasuarez.com/leadership. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll take a little moment here to take a look at some of the YouTube comments and LinkedIn. Oh, from Pakistan. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining. Hi, Salah. And again, let me know in the comments whether you're watching this live or later. I'm really interested to know what industries you work in, what moments you struggle with? Is it presentation skills? And even then, you can get more specific. Is it introducing yourself during a presentation? Is it closing presentations? Is it transitioning? And this is where it's different because with native speakers, when you do presentation skills, or which, and the reason I'm talking about presentations is because that's really tied into storytelling. Not only do you have to craft the storytelling of the presentation, there are little moments that native speakers don't have to think about as much that you do. For example, what to say every time you switch to a new slide, how signposting, how to note visually where to go because you might be self-conscious about the prepositions. So this is why I really encourage, whether this is training for you or if you're watching this and you're in HR, learning and development, and you know that you have non-native speakers in your leadership positions, this kind of training will really help them feel more confident and represent the company better. And a lot of times, what happens is I start doing the training to be able to perform better at work and with clients. And that leads to confidence that then allows them to feel better about going on stage, doing panels, doing interviews. All of these things elevate not only them and their personal brand, but the company as well. Again, thank you so much for sharing this time with me. Tomorrow, we're going to do the third installment of this presentation series, and I hope to see you there.